examples, of some large companies, but this goes down to, you know, the local smoothie bar owner who says that, he or she is only works with fresh and natural products, and there's a lot of greenwashing that goes down there too, because sometimes it's not only natural products. They throw a little sugar here, but that's a whole nother. But I want to make it clear that it just not it this does not just impact large businesses or corporations. Welcome back. Welcome back. This is the People's Voice. I am Trey Evans, and I am the People's Voice. Thank you again for checking out the podcast this week. As always, it's greatly appreciated. As always, we appreciate everyone who has taken the opportunity to listen to the podcast so far. We thank you for listening. Everyone who is new to the podcast and you're listening to the first time, welcome. And we hope you enjoy listening to the podcast. If you do, we do ask that if you have some time and you think this information is worth sharing, please subscribe to the podcast. We do provide a podcast every Friday. And when you subscribe to the podcast, you can be notified when it drops. And then we also put out a video on YouTube every Friday at 3 p.m. of the podcast. So if you want to watch me perform or conduct this podcast, you can watch me too, right? But you can subscribe on YouTube as well, and you'll be notified once the podcast is released. Thank you. So today I am going to talk about an issue in the environmental space. And that is my way of teasing everyone for a minute as I, set this up. But today I want to talk about the concept of greenwashing. And, I never assume who is or who is not listening to the podcast, right? I have a general sense of, what my audience makeup looks like through analytics and things of that nature. But you never know who's listening for the first time or who might have just been, going through podcasts and found something else. So I never want to assume just because I give out a topic, because it's a long-winded way of me trying to explain this, that everybody knows what that is. But greenwashing is what I want to talk about today. So greenwashing is, I guess in layman's terms, it's basically when companies give off or I should say promote themselves as being environmentally conscious. They promote themselves as being environmentally conscious, but their efforts to be environmentally conscious is more driven by wanting to market themselves that way to gain a greater share of the market that they're in or sell more products and services, compared to them actually implementing and creating any changes to save or help the environment. I think I explained that pretty well, but I'll explain it a little bit shorter here in a second. But that's essentially what greenwashing is. Greenwashing is when an organization will spend money and time to market itself, to seem like it's more environmentally friendly, or that their products are more environmentally safe, or from a pollution and recycling standpoint, and basically that their products help to minimize damage in the environment. And now, the thing with greenwashing is that it plays kind of two sides of the coin, right? And what I mean by that is you have companies that promote themselves as being environmentally friendly, promote themselves as trying to reduce the impact on destroying the environment through their practices and products and services. And in some cases, you genuinely have some companies that, excuse me, my mic was not sounding right there. You generally have, genuinely have some companies that actually want to do those things, right? And they have the best of intentions, but in some cases, you have companies that just don't have to the capability to see those things through or to implement those changes that they want to have an impact in the environment. Those changes, based on their capability. Then on the other side of the greenwashing argument, you have companies that just flat out, for a better word, lack of a word, they just lie, right? They just tell you falsehoods to make you seem as a consumer and also as an investor. And I'll talk a little bit about that dynamic there, that they are environmentally conscious when in all reality they're not. So, but that's what greenwashing is. It's basically when a company will spend time and money to market itself as being environmentally friendly, but don't follow through with that principle. So, okay, greenwashing. Well, what's new, right? Because, a lot of people might say, well, companies have been doing this forever, right? I mean, I'm reading an article here from businessdaily.com, and they did a great job of covering this topic on greenwashing. And they brought up a great point. Greenwashing, the term, and they kind of gave a little bit of a history here about greenwashing. It basically was a term that was developed in 1986 by an environmentalist named Jay Westerfeld, excuse me, and he coined the term of greenwashing. He basically, the idea emerged in a period when consumers basically got most of their information through news, primarily from television, radio, and print. So, of course, during that time in 1986, when a company would say, "Hey, we're environmentally friendly," or "We're the number one, recycler," or "We use only organic products," in 1986, companies could get away with that because, there was really no way. Well, it was tougher to fact check these things. Right now, a company says that they do X, Y, and Z. Well, you can jump on the internet and do pretty basic research to find out what their production practices are, things of that nature. So, but going back, the term and greenwashing was coined by an environmentalist back in 1986. But what I was going to say in terms of the term greenwashing, this is not a new concept, right? I'm pretty sure many of you listening have heard of the term whitewashing, right? And whitewashing is a term that has been used a million times in a million different ways, but specifically with companies and organizations where, they will whitewash or cover up an issue or something that they've done to make the issue or the news go away, right? And that can be anything from embezzlement to sex scandals. I mean, we see it every day on the news. It seems like another air quote scandal is appearing from an organization. But whitewashing is similar to greenwashing. In whitewashing, they basically put out a marketing piece to say, if you have a company that says that, or you have a company that endured, some sexual allegations or, allegations of inappropriate behavior, you'll get a statement maybe saying, well, we are now 100% compliant, and we've made sure that we've put our employees through such and such training to make sure, sensitivity training, blah, 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 blah. So that's kind of whitewashing. And I'm giving an example of that so When I'm talking about greenwashing, we now kind of have a foundation of what it's comparable to. So that's whitewashing, but today, of course, I'm talking about greenwashing. So why am I talking about this, right? So what? Because many people, and there's been a million surveys here that, state that basically that consumers basically already feel like, companies lie most of the time anyway, right? But why am I talking about this? Well, here's the thing. Many companies are utilizing this not just to sell products. It just doesn't start or stop at selling products or services. It also goes into investor relationships. And now I'm talking about, individuals or corporations that invest money into companies to help them grow and expand. Because often you'll have companies have to, many companies have to, or I should say, many companies establish what they call a CSR, which is corporate social responsibility guidelines or program for their company. And they put this information out saying that they are going to be this company, right? They're going to be the environmentally correct company. They're going to practice all of the recycling needs. They're going to properly dispose of waste. They put this in their CSR. And then you have investors who are looking for companies that are looking to be less impactful in a negative way on the environment, and they get money. Well, where greenwashing comes in is that many times these companies put these CSRs together, right? These social responsibility guidelines, corporate social responsibility guidelines together, and then they don't follow through. But the company gets the investment from the investor and they keep going along. So greenwashing has a huge effect on how money is spent by consumers, invested by consumers, and of course, ultimately, it affects how well a company will or will not do. And, you know, greenwashing is, again, it's a term that was coined in 1986, but it is something that has been going on for quite some time. You have many companies that have practiced greenwashing. Some companies that we all use. And matter of fact, let me talk about that a little bit because I was doing some research and I came across an article here on earth.org. And earth.org did a great job they listed 10 companies that have participated in some form of greenwashing. And let me be, extremely transparent, right? These are companies that not only I'm invested in, but also companies that I've used their products. And so, reading this as a consumer and a product and someone who is committed to making sure that I do everything as much as I can as an individual to reduce the negative impacts on the environment because I am an outdoorist. I am someone who runs, I hike, I ride, my bike outside. I fly drone. I do a lot of stuff outside. And so the environment is important to me. And so I want to make sure that as an investor and a consumer that, hey, these companies that I've giving my money to, that they're doing what they said they were going to do. So I just wanted to talk about that because it's also, personal for me as well. But I'm sharing this information because, again, like I always say, when these topics come up or I'm researching, what I would like to talk about on the podcast, it always blows me away when I start getting into the weeds of these things about, who's involved in some of the feedback. But on earth.org, they listed 10 companies, and this is only the 10 that they listed. There are hundreds of companies, small and large, that practice greenwashing. But they listed 10, and I'm not going to go through all 10, but the one that kind of was kind of glaring to me was Coca-Cola. And this is no way bashing Coca-Cola, and full transparency, I am an investor in Coca-Cola. So this is no way, I don't want it to be misconstrued that this is an attack. This is just something that was highlighted in this report. And they do an annual report that there's an annual report called Break Free from Plastic. And in this report, basically what they do is they rank which companies are the number one sources of polluting in the world, right? It's called Break Free from Plastic. It's a report. Now, excuse me. No, I'm sorry. In an annual report from Break Free Plastic are the ones who published the report. Anyway, in there they say that Coca-Cola was listed as one of the top polluters in the world, right? And why is that, right? When you think about, well, why would Coca-Cola how is Coca-Cola polluting or identified as one of the largest polluters in the world? Well, Coca-Cola sells Coca-Cola, right? They sell carbonated beverages in bottles, and water and juice and, a million other products. But, when you think Coca-Cola, you immediately think about that plastic bottle. Well, the problem with that plastic bottle is that it is what they call a single-use bottle, right? Because once you drink your Coca-Cola, and again, I'm not beating up on Coca-Cola, but just using that as an example, once you drink your Coca-Cola, what happens to that bottle, right? Now, in many states across the United States, there is recycling, right? You as the consumer, you think you're doing the right thing. You take that bottle and you recycle it. And many of the initiatives set by Coca-Cola and other beverage companies is that they are going to take those bottles and recycle them and utilize them to create additional bottles. And that's what you are told, right? Coca-Cola is committed to, a matter of fact, I'm reading a statement here, and this is directly from the bottling industry. It says, globally, we have committed to get every bottle back by 2030. So that's to ensure that none of it ends up in oceans and landfills and side of the road. This is a commitment that many bottlers and beverage companies have made. The problem is, though, is that this is not happening. And Coca-Cola, and this is the last time I'll say their name, is one of the leading companies that are contributing to the pollution of the environment because they sell products that utilize plastic bottles that are not being recycled at a high enough rate. Now, they are recycling them, but they're not recycling them at a high enough rate because, let's be honest, people drink a lot of beverages, right? Especially from plastic containers. And oftentimes the cost involved to recycle, break down, reproduce, a lot of times that cost is much higher than it is just to create an original bottle. But I won't get too deep into that. But that's an example of a company that is committed to, and Coca-Cola does wonderful things, right? I don't want in any shape, form, or fashion think that, okay, so they are not doing the best in terms of, and this is throughout all beverage companies, with recycling their plastic bottles. They do tons of other wonderful stuff for the environment, for the community. So I have no problem with Coca-Cola. But this is an example of what greenwashing is, right? Because they have a commitment to do the right thing in terms of minimal impact to the environment, but the capability is just not there based on the number of bottles that are being produced and thrown away every year. So that's kind of an example of greenwashing. And this topic has reached, the highest levels of government. Matter of fact, let me play this clip here from the Hill. And in this clip, Senator Elizabeth Warren was talking about this very issue, and she was really coming down on some of the gas companies who promote sustainability and promote being environmentally friendly and following out objectives to help reduce the impact on the environment in a negative way. So let me play that clip from her, and then I'll follow up from there.
Add to your numbers there. During the past 5 years, following the signing of the Paris Agreement, the world's biggest banks have put $3.8 trillion into financing fossil fuel exploration, drilling, and trading. Now, at the same time, some of these very same banks have been patting themselves on the back for announcing meaningless climate pledges. For example, JP Morgan Chase relies on accounting tricks to try to pretend that it has cut the overall greenhouse gas emissions associated with its lending. This so-called corporate greenwashing lets giant banks get these great headlines without doing the serious work that we need to protect our environment.
So, as I said, she raised a huge and great point right there. And as she said, many of these companies, they get the headlines, right? So-and-so bank invest in XYZ corporation who set out to, clean 100 beaches, and, this bank is, but in all actuality, it's just a headline because many times they just don't either A, follow through with it, or B, it's a one-time initiative. One of the things that I was reading here as well is about, corporations that end up following through, right? They follow through with what they said they were going to do, but then the problem is they do it one time. So they'll say, well, we're going to clean up the coast from all spilled oil that is collecting in various parts of the ocean based on, ruptured tankers or oil spills that occur all the time that really don't get reported as much as they do occur. And I'll say reported on a national basis, but that's a whole nother conversation. They'll make a commitment. This year, we're going to clean up 3 million gallons of spilled oil. Well, the problem is that if you have an oil refinery that's been leaking oil for the last 10 years into the water, and you just cleaning up 3 million, you've made the commitment to clean up 3 million, but you still have another, let's say 7 million that's sitting out there. Right. And again, it's not that the company doesn't want to do it. It's just that they really don't have the capability to do it because sometimes the environmental impact has been so great that they don't have the ability to now reverse it as they said they would like to. So, but that I wanted to play that clip because that was another example of greenwashing. One more example of greenwashing, and then I'm going to talk about what can you do as a consumer and also as a business owner, and I'm just giving examples, of some large companies, but this goes down to, the local smoothie bar owner who says that, he or she is only works with fresh and natural products, and there's a lot of greenwashing that goes down there too, because sometimes it's not only natural products, they throw a little sugar here, but that's a whole nother, but I want to make it clear that this does not just impact large businesses or corporations. But one more example of greenwashing. Have you ever heard of vegan leather? Vegan leather. Now, I saw this and I kept saying, what is vegan leather? Like, what is it made out of leaves? Like, I could not understand it. I found this article here in the Washington Post where they talked about greenwashing too. And this topic is really starting to gain momentum. Literally this information and these articles that I'm reading here is all within the last, 6 to 12 months. So this is really starting to, bubble to the top. But vegan leather. So I said, yeah, I want to find out what this is. So Vegan leather, right? And for those of us who are maybe old enough, is nothing more than what we used to call pleather, right? So back in the day, if somebody showed up with a fake leather coat, we called it pleather, right? Because you could touch it and feel it wasn't leather, right? And leather is usually made from some type of raw animal skin, typically cow leather and things of that nature. But back in the day, we called, if your coat didn't have real leather on it, we called it pleather. Well, that's what vegan leather is today, right? And vegan leather is basically and I'm reading directly from the Washington Post here, it says it's a synthetic fossil fuel based material. Fox leathers are largely made of polyurethane, also known as PVC, both of which are types of plastic. Now, here you have people promoting that we sell vegan leather and we're environmentally safe and we care about the environment. So we don't, sell products that are a result of killing animals. But when these coats are made, number one, the chemicals that's needed to formulate, a plastic onto a coat, there are chemicals that have to go into making that happen, which are then dispersed oftentimes into waterways and disposed in other ways. But then bigger than that, when this jacket or coat or hat, whatever it is no longer worn, it gets disposed oftentimes into the trash, which then goes back to a landfill. And these things are not biodegradable. So the vegan leather, right, is a great example and another example of an example of greenwashing, meaning, yeah, you're no longer killing cows to sell coats, but now you're putting on, polyurethane plastics, which are not biodegradable at all. So I just wanted to give an example of that, so you have kind of a wide range of different examples of what greenwashing is. But as always on this show, what I want to do is gave you the issue. How can you, well, first let me talk about as a business owner, how to avoid greenwashing. And again, I'm reading an article here from businessdaily.com. One of the first things you want to do is stay away from fluffy language, right? Don't just throw around terms like all natural products, eco-friendly. Really think about what you're saying about your product or service, and does it meet the standards of what you're saying? Again, I made the example about the smoothie bar, but there's so many other small businesses and large that throw out these terms, and their products or services don't complement the terms that they're throwing out. Watch out for pictures, right? So you have pictures of, and I don't want to keep, picking on the smoothie bar, but that's the first thing that comes to my head. You're on a restaurant, or even a large restaurant, like some of the fast food restaurants, McDonald's, Burger King, take your pick. And they state that, all of their products are now going into paper bags, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean that you are environmentally friendly, right? How are you disposing of all the cooking oil that you use to make those products? What are the electricity savings, or what are the power requirements, or how do you conserve power in your restaurants, things of that nature. So, just be careful about the pictures that you put out there. If you're not totally bought in or have a holistic process for being environmentally friendly and reducing negative impact. Don't use labels. And I'm just, again, reading this from businessdaily.com. They have a list of things. I'm not going to read them all, but they made some good points here. And then the last one is outright lies. Like, never use fabricated terms or data to support whether or not you are environmentally friendly or all organic, right? Don't say terms like, we are 100% clean energy company. Like if you're a petroleum company, you're not 100% clean energy, right? And I'm just using that as an example. But those are some of the ways or some of the things you can do to avoid greenwashing. And then for those who are consumers and you want to make sure that the products and services and the companies that you support are following through with what they said, it lists here some things that you can do to make sure that the company is meeting those needs, or meeting those thresholds. First thing you want to do is, ask questions. If they say that their clothing is manufactured in a sustainable fashion, do your own research. Find out who their production, where's their production, what materials are being used to produce those things. There are certain things that you can do as a consumer to kind of do your own individual research before purchasing their service or goods. When they state that they're recyclable or they produce materials from only recycled goods, do your research. A lot of this is supposed to be listed on their websites. If not, there are a ton of independent researchers as well. Is the bottling company using only recycled materials to produce their bottled goods? You can look this up, because all of the information that I read, it shows that almost every year the amount of recyclable plastics that can be used to be recycled, that number is dropping, meaning that there are more and more plastic items sitting in landfills and other parts of the country and the world that are not being used, which is also another thing that's lending itself to climate, some of the issues that we're having with climate control and things of that nature. So do the research on that. Does not use excessive packaging. Again, I made the point about the fast food restaurant using the brown paper bags, right? They use paper bags, which is great, is biodegradable, but if you're throwing a plastic straw in there, right, or the cup has a plastic lid, well, you're not 100% biodegradable. You're not utilizing 100% biodegradable products, right? And sometimes companies make these claims and hold them to the fire. Again, as a consumer and definitely as an investor, you can ask these questions and really search for the answers and hold them to the fire. Social media is a great tool, right? It's the gift and the curse, I say, right? If you use it correctly, you can at these companies and say, hey, just did some research, found out that you're not doing X, Y, and Z. What's the plan for your company to meet the standards that you said that you want to meet by X amount of years or whatever? But you can do that as a consumer. You do have power. So, utilize that and definitely share the information. That's the key. Share the information about greenwashing. Share the information about some of the practices of these companies, so we can collectively make a change to help not only the environment, but really bring some strong principles back to doing business correctly. And that's really what the goal of this conversation was today, to kind of bring it to the forefront and, in the hopes that we can help companies and organizations and communities reverse some of the damage that has been done from an environmental standpoint and hold these companies to the standards that they say they are operating under. So that is what I wanted to talk about today, greenwashing. I do hope that this information was enlightening. As always, if you would like to leave a comment about any topic that we cover here, you can reach me on my social media. You can reach me at I am Trey Evans, and that's on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and also on LinkedIn as well. And then you can also reach us at the show podcast, which is the People's Voice Podcast, the People's Voice Podcast. So, as always, your time is appreciated today. Dreams are not just for sleeping. Please wake up and live your dreams. My name is Trey Evans, the People's Voice. Tell somebody about the dream. Salute. The People's Voice.